Hello, and welcome to Appleton Engaged. I'm your host, Timber Smith, DEI coordinator for the city of Appleton.
And I'm Andy Anam, the communications manager for the city.
And Appleton Engaged is a podcast that explores the many people, organizations, and resources that make our community a great place to live, work, and play. So whether you're a longtime resident or just getting to know Appleton, join us as we learn more about our community together.
Today's resource need no recognition. Those three miracle numbers, as I think everybody know about it, whether you're looking for help for yourself, for someone, or you just want to connect with someone who can help you in the time of need. By just calling those three numbers is something feel like we are connected to a human voice. Can you just tell us more about those three numbers?
Oh, yes, I definitely will. But I want to say, actually, I think there's those who know, but I think there's a good number of people who actually don't know. So I'm pretty excited to share about this resource and just as excited to actually introduce today's guest. Today's guest is Lisa Smith, 211 Director for the United Way Fox Cities. Hey, Lisa, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Can you please tell us about yourself and your association with Appleton and the Fox Cities region?
Sure. So I'm originally from Upper Michigan, way up north, up in the Keweenaw area. And my husband is an engineer. And sadly, the plant that he worked at in the UP closed. And up there's usually not too many other job opportunities. So we chose Appleton. It's an amazing place. It was amazing to come and visit here. And we had driven through once and said, wouldn't it be cool to live in Appleton? And literally 6 months later, the White Pine Mine, it was a big copper mine, closed. And we're like, I think we want to move to Appleton. And I have to say, we've been here 28 years. Our kids went to Appleton West and graduated, from the Appleton schools. Amazing school system. Like for us, there was so much here that we never had opportunities to, take part in. We didn't have a lot of arts and culture, where we were from. We didn't have a lot of parks. Certainly the schools were just unbelievable all over. And so we've just loved it here. We really enjoyed having all of these opportunities when our kids were younger, and they got to really benefit from that.
That's awesome. All right, you ready to jump in?
Sure.
Okay, Lisa, can you please tell us about your resource?
So we're talking today about 211, which is actually a dialing code. Dialing codes are very common. Most people are very familiar with 911. So dialing codes are established nationally by the FCC for specific needs. So, of course, 911, everybody knows, little kids know right from, kindergarten on. We wish 211 was that familiar. But 211 was established in the late 90s at the request of United Way Worldwide at the time, or they were called the United Way of America at that time. But because United Way understood the need for locally based information and understanding of resources. They're funding resources, but people don't always know about them or how to access them. The other side of that is the data that's collected. So the data that we collect at 211, and 211 operates the same no matter what state you're in. We're all accredited by a national organization, Inform USA. We all meet those standards so that we can provide assistance across state lines if necessary. There are some differences as well, but in the case of United Way Fox Cities 211, we've been around since we became a 211 in 2005. So the state system was built over the course of the last 30 years. Certain communities wanted to have a 211 call center, and they petitioned and they got it. And so in Wisconsin, we are a system of 8 contact centers, including the one here in Menasha that's run by United Way Fox Cities. We are a 24/7 live answer friend. I always say you're talking to a friend. We have very few questions that we need to ask people. There's very little that you have to do except pick up the phone. You can also text or chat with us. But the main thing to remember is 211 is there to be a helpline, but we also have a lot of other training and skills to help you if you need that advanced help.
Couple of things I picked up on was you said you can actually text 211 also, so you don't have to just call, because I mean texting is super popular. And I can actually state that I was lucky enough to go tour the 211 center with Lisa and watch a text go through the system, and that's amazing. Can you tell us more?
Sure. So texting it's very, very convenient for people, but it is a live two-way text. So when you text your zip code to 898-211, that text will be routed to the local call center. So for our call center in Menasha, we do serve 10 counties. So anybody in those 10 counties, when they put that zip code in, the technology routes that text to our staff. So you're actually talking to a person. It's a live two-way text. We use a national platform called Prevention Pays, so it's a very, very rigorous process to get that implemented. It's a statewide now service, so everybody takes texts. And we were the third center, though, to introduce it and implement it locally. So we were really proud of that because, it was a big step to be able to do multi-channel. Our primary way of communication is always going to be the phone. And I want to talk about that a little bit more as to why it was established and really what 211 was designated for. So,
To make it easy for the listeners to understand, if a person calls 211, how will he be connected to this live person? How long does it take for them to get connected when they are in the hour of need?
that's a really great question because really we are a call center, and we use metrics to measure certain things that most all call centers do. We like to measure our service level, which means how long did you have to wait to connect to one of our agents. And it's really important for us to be above the industry standard with that because somebody could be calling with something very serious. Mm-hmm. So we like to be at 90% of calls answered within 30 seconds or less. We're almost always there, sometimes higher. In a business contact center, that's not great because it means you might be overstaffed. But for 211, we want to be sure to get that call within 30 seconds before somebody either abandons the call or, kind of gives up. The other feature that we have that we've implemented over the past few years as a statewide system is the auto callback. So say, you do have to wait a little bit longer than maybe you usually do. You can opt in for that callback. And so what happens is when one of our agents hangs up from one call and finishes the intake form, that callback is automatic. We don't have to do anything. We don't control that at all. The system makes sure that callback goes out. So that's really nice because we don't want to miss any calls.
Right.
When you dial 211, however, there is quite a long menu that you will listen to. So you'll dial 211 and you'll get the statewide IVR, we call it. And it gives you options to talk to somebody about some of our specialized lines. And specialized lines in every state can vary, but in Wisconsin, 211 system, including us in the Fox Cities, have two very specialized lines. One is the Wisconsin Addiction Recovery Helpline. So a lot of times people they don't even know they're talking to 211. Those calls can be routed either from the Addiction Recovery Helpline 800 number by calling 211 or SAMHSA. So nationally, SAMHSA routes all of the calls in our service area in Wisconsin and in the Fox Cities to that local call center.
All right. Let me ask the $1 million question. And the $1 million question to me is, what do people call 211 for? I mean, because I don't know if people know why they should be calling 211. So can you kind of tell us what does 211 do, and can you give us examples?
Absolutely. So I do want to go back to like the original idea behind 211, of course, was United Ways wanted this robust program 24/7 to help people in local communities connect to resources. After 9/11, however, the government said we need a secondary source of live answer in this country when there's a disaster or pandemic, which we hadn't had at that time, because 911 was so overburdened and so surged and wasn't able to do, to handle that. And many calls that came to 911 during disasters didn't rise to the level of needing 911. So most states had already started their 211 system, including Wisconsin. Some states use 311, but I will say now everybody is 211 across the nation. So that dialing code, the United Ways dialing code, I always say, was really established to be a secondary source of live answer for disaster, and also then to be able to curate all those emerging resources. You know, we've been activated for multiple emergencies, and it's so important to have all of that information when people call us. They're told to call 211 for, you know, shelter locations, sandbags, anything, you name it. Where are we having, you know, who's serving lunch today in a big disaster? We've had several floods, and sandbags and cleanup kits and all those things are really important, and they call 211 to find out all that information. So it's not just the call side, it's also the database side where we're collecting resources during a disaster. We curate a very robust database day to day. So, and I will mention more about that, I think, just because I think it's important for people to know that our referrals are unbiased and it's based on a database that's curated using the same standards nationally.
So how do you coordinate that kind of information, like getting the list of the resources, which is ever changing, and then, you know, you have to connect them to the caller who is looking for those resources? How do you filter those needs?
So the resources are always vetted through emergency management or sometimes FEMA. In certain cases, the statewide Wisconsin Emergency Management provides resources, but typically it's going to be your local county emergency manager that says, here's vetted resources that you can include. And so when folks call in, the first thing we ask is, what's your zip code? Our work is unbiased, but it is always going to depend on where you live, right? So the resources are going to be different county to county.
Right.
So one question we do have to ask callers is, what is your zip code? They can also put it into the system now, which didn't happen until just a few years ago, but people usually know their zip code, and if not, we look it up because we do need that. So resources are going to be based on the zip code in a disaster or just day to day. And we also do ask age because there are resources that can be specific to certain age groups. But really, we don't ask a lot of other information because honestly, there aren't resources that depend on all the demographic questions that most places will ask you.
So can you give us examples of some of the types of calls that come in, or some of the needs of our community members that call 211?
Absolutely. So I've been there almost 10 years, and I was trained on phones first because we had 2 people in the call center and we needed another staff. And so I've seen a lot of data. I've taken a lot of calls. But I'll tell you what, the number one call hasn't changed in all the time I've been there. In fact, before my time. And I'm going to let you guys guess what you think it might be. Number one reason people call us.
Homelessness.
Yes. Shelter, rent assistance, finding low-income housing. And sadly, I'll say this, it's still the number one because the resources are finite in that area, and it's a complicated situation. So while we want to help people, we want to get them to resources as quickly as possible, sometimes there just isn't a resource. And, you know, if the shelters are full, I was on the phones this morning, I took, maybe 15 calls, 3 homeless, 1 domestic violence, 1 was an elderly woman who was scammed, and they call us all the time. They love talking to a real person, a friend. You know, our elderly relatives and friends don't always understand technology, and they love to talk to people on the phone, a real person, local. So we get a lot of calls from them, and we love that because, you know, we want to be there just as a support. Sometimes there isn't a resource. Sometimes they just want a phone number. But number one reason is housing. Second is usually utility assistance, especially this time of year. Typically through the winter, the power companies are not able to turn off electricity through the moratorium period. But then in April, you know, people are needing help paying the back bills, first of all. We work very closely with energy assistance across the state, so a lot of times energy assistance tells them to call 211 to find all the resources that might help them with that electric bill. Like housing, it's important to call before it gets to a point where you're either going to be disconnected or evicted.
Right.
I think if I could leave one tidbit, it's, hey, if you need help, give us a call. We're going to try to help you if we can, honestly. And we're going to connect you with resources. Doesn't mean they're always going to be able to help you, but at the very least, you're getting into a pipeline and understanding the system so that, because it's a lot harder once somebody loses their utilities or loses their housing. It's much more difficult.
This is so powerful, and I can already see the impact. Like talking to a real person almost diffuse the situation when somebody's going through a lot. But I'm sure you have some success stories too, where 211 came, because of 211, you guys saved the date. So do you have one such story out of the millions call you take every year?
I do, and this one was one of my calls. All of our team takes calls and have amazing success stories. I'll say this about people who work in 211, generally across the state or anywhere. But in our call center, we have a very small but mighty team. We all take calls. We all work in the database. There is no hierarchy. We're all doing this work. That's what the work is. But the one story that I've always remembered, because when I went home that night, I just felt like, wow, this system has to be here for this kind of a person. So I got a call. There was a woman in a hotel in this city of Appleton, afraid to leave, had to be out in an hour. She had a motel voucher, and she had to leave within the hour. And she said, I can't leave. And she wouldn't give a lot of information, but there were red flags. We are also trained to recognize human trafficking, and other things like that. The 211 systems are, just because it's another point of entry and another way to help people. We're not experts by any means, but we have training, and certainly we have great organizations in our community that provide the services for that. And I had a suspicion, and I had to ask, and she wouldn't say yes, but she wouldn't say no. And she said, I can't leave, and they're going to kick me out. And if I get put out on the street, then it became critical. And she said, if you call the police, I'm going to hang up. I don't want the police involved. So I called Harbor House and talked to one of their advocates, amazing organization. And they went over there and picked her up within probably the hour before she was going to have to be. So they assessed the situation, whether they're the experts. I am not. But that's a powerful story, because it shows 211 is there to get you to that help as quickly as possible. We're not the experts in any one thing. We have amazing organizations that are. And that was a success. If she hadn't called us, I don't know what would have happened. I don't know that she would have called directly to an agency or even thought of that as an option. And sometimes people don't want law enforcement involved, and we have to respect that unless it rises to a level where we have to get them involved.
How many calls does the call center take a year, if you know?
Well, we've taken 70,000 in 5 years. We just did this data, and I'll tell you why. There was a bump in 2020. We were designated as the COVID helpline in Wisconsin and the vaccine line.
Woo.
And we're at about 1.5 million calls statewide since March 15th of 2020. So.
Wow.
So those calls didn't have to go to public health, didn't have to go to emergency management, didn't have to go. The state Department of Health Services designated 211. Call them. We'll make sure they have information. All of our local health departments worked with us, got us information. It was amazing, really. We were not prepared for the surges. Nobody was. Every state activated 211, and it had never happened before. So. But we managed those surges, and we never missed a call. We worked longer hours. We had volunteers. We brought in AmeriCorps. We trained Team Rubicon, the veterans group, to help us. So we built the capacity to handle that. And really, we got to talk to a lot of people that probably didn't even know they were talking to 211, right? And so we'd tell them about 211, like, if you ever need us in the future. So it was a silver lining to that, to be able to talk to that many people who may have never heard of us. And again, to talk to a real person during that time was very unique. So really proud of how our state system responded, and everybody pulled together and made it work.
Are there any upcoming events or initiatives or engagement opportunities that 211 is going to have?
We don't participate in a lot of activities. We do like to have information and sometimes a presence at back to school fairs. We've gone to schools when they've had parents' nights and things like that. Certainly United Way Fox Cities has more events and things that they participate in. But I would like to mention some things that we're kind of working on, and I think it's an engagement opportunity, but it's also really it's an opportunity to maximize this infrastructure and use it for some pretty innovative things to help city government, to help county government, to help community-based organizations with specific things that a call center could handle, right? So it could be doing some intakes, doing maybe a coordinated entry intake, maybe helping the shelters with taking some of those calls off their plate. We would love to be able to do that. I think before I retire, I'd like to see us be able to provide that level of assistance in this community. We have amazing trained staff. We have the infrastructure, the technology, and we'd really like to start using it to do more than just the base 211 work.
I know that you help community, but is there any way community can give back and help the 211 in any way?
You know, I think calling us, and I'll tell you why I say that. We want calls because calls generate data, which generates trends and needs. We spotted trends in every state, but in this community long before they became public. The baby formula shortage, the propane shortage, the rise of opiates, all the 211 data pointed to that long before it became, really well known. So the data is invaluable. So the more people that call, the better sample size we have. And, even if we can't find a resource, we're logging that data. It's not going to be lost. And then our funding partners, United Way Fox Cities, for one, can put funds where they're needed based on this call data. I mean, it's unbelievable. There is a website, 211 Counts, if love to see data. It's real time. It'll give you data by zip code, by school district, by city, by county. And it's fascinating to see the differences in zip codes in one city or, the trends that you're going to start seeing if you follow it pretty closely. We're going to be seeing more transportation requests. We've already started that. And I think what we noticed last summer we were getting a lot more calls from elderly folks who were getting evicted because their rent had been increased and their social security couldn't cover that.
Right.
I mean, in this area, and it was just in the Post-Crescent, we're like, oh, we saw that last summer. It was in the data, more people over age 65 being evicted from long-term rentals because their social security wasn't enough. I mean, what are they going to do? Anyway, so our data is super important. It's important nationally. It's been on tons of national news stories about this 211 system is generating amazing amounts of data. And that data helps, determine funding and things. But it's also important to have a huge sample size so that data is more accurate. So I would tell people, call us. Try us out, test us, maybe ask for something. If you don't need anything, we get calls all the time. Hey, what is it you guys do? We're happy to tell you. If you do need something, call us. I always say we may not have a resource because probably one might not exist, but we're going to talk to you and maybe we can brainstorm together on some other options. Again, it's a person who thinks and lives in this community and understands and is trained to help move you from point A to point B and get you to resources. So for me, that's just always been amazing. Like real people helping people. Love it.
I've kind of got a two-parter question. A, who can people contact if they'd like to learn more about 211? And is there the possibility of someone going out and doing presentations about 211? Let's say if there's an organization or a business who wants to have better understanding or partner or anything like that.
Absolutely. So you can certainly call United Way Fox Cities, the main line, and it will get to us. All of our staff at United Way Fox Cities can speak on behalf of 211. I mean, we've had this call center since 2005, and it's really kind of a gem, and they're very proud of it, and they speak on it very well. I do a lot of presentations. My staff does a lot of presentations, and they have a very different perspective. So, just give us a call. We don't necessarily ask people to call 211. They could, because you're not going to get the person you're trying. You're not going to get me all the time, and that's part of the system. Is you can't call 211 and ask for somebody. You work with the agent that answers the phone. But yeah, United Way Fox Cities can also email through their Contact Us page on their website. We love doing presentations. They are always different. We always have different stories and, depending on what's happening in the community, a little bit different twist on, here's what's happening. This is what's happening in your community right now.
So before I go to shout out, I had a question. So our demography is changing rapidly. So what's the way to connect when there is a communication barrier? They are not able to explain that in simple English when they call 211.
And I'm going to be completely honest with you. I still have concerns about our cultural competence. We use an amazing interpreting service. It's a national interpreting service, and all 211s use them. But I come from a family where we spoke a different language, and I can tell you that when I have to say to them, I'm getting a translator, an interpreter, I'm not sure that doesn't always, they don't know what we're saying. Like all of a sudden it's dead air and nobody's there while we're getting, so I still have some concerns. I think as a system we can do better. We do have some staff member who speaks Spanish, which is great, but it would be so wonderful to have more people want to work for 211 who spoke other languages, because that to me, again, you're talking to a friend. You're not talking to an interpreter who's then talking to your friend. But we do manage, we have multiple different ethnicities that come through the 211 line, and we can almost always get the services we need.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the transparency on that, Lisa.
Yeah.
Because I think that's powerful.
We can improve there, absolutely.
Is there any additional information you feel is important for our Appleton Engage listeners to know that maybe we didn't ask a question about here today?
Gosh, there's so many. I could talk about this program forever. But I think one thing to know is that when you dial 211, you're always going to connect with a local person, a real person, and it doesn't have to be for any one specific reason. This system is critically important to this country in terms of disaster response, pandemic response. It's getting, we're seeing more and more disasters, and 211 is more and more important than even in the 90s when it was created. The coordination and the partnership with United Ways makes so much sense. United Ways had a vision, and that vision is now the largest helpline in this country, non-emergency, 24/7, that provides, that assistance just in time when you call or when you text. And also, I think, 211 as a dialing code it's not as recognizable as 911. But if I could ask for, if I could have a dream, it would be that it would be as recognizable and that you would tell people about it. Call us. We love talking to you. And there's no wrong reason to call us. So that would be my ask. Get the word out, make sure folks know, and there's no wrong reason. We love talking to you, and, hopefully we can get you some help if that's what you need, or maybe sometimes it's just a phone number, or we've had people call and ask for recipes even, so.
I had the opportunity to go to the local 211 center, and I saw how Lisa and her team are so dedicated in what they do. A lot of passion you can see in the eyes, and that's where I feel you have cared for the community. So it's time for the shout out. So who do you want to send your shout out to?
Oh, that's an easy one. I have an amazing team. We're small but mighty. There's 4 of us right now. And we handle, and I don't think I answered this, about 45 calls a day on a typical day. Some of those might be addiction recovery helpline calls, which are longer and require a little bit more navigation. My team is amazing. And I've had amazing teams since I started there. And people retired, and then we bring in a lot of great interns from UW-Oshkosh and the Health and Human Service, and we try to hire them if we can because they're so amazing. But they are passionate, and they're going to work so hard to try to find help. I mean, we were all today on calls and making calls on behalf of somebody and trying to connect through warm transfer and then explaining what was going on with that person so that they don't have to keep retelling those stories. So we do more than just give out a phone number. I will tell you that, if it's needed. If you just need a phone number, we're happy to do it.
Well, Lisa, we just want to say thank you. Appleton Engage listeners, we are going to start wrapping up this episode. We want to say thank you to you for spending time with us, giving us your minds and ears. Thank you for caring about another amazing resource in our city, helping to make this the best place it can be, a stronger community, serving us all. It's just fantastic, the resources that we have available to us. Appleton Engage listeners, you already know we are trying to become the #1 podcast in Northeast Wisconsin, and we need your help. So what we need is, if you have any great ideas for what we can do to improve the show, if you got questions you think we should be asking our guests, if you would like to be a guest, maybe you would like to recommend a guest. All of these things are things that will help us. You can reach out to us at diversity@appleton.org. Once again, that's diversity@appleton.org. Also, we think we have something very, very special here, and we want to get in front of more eyes and ears of our community members. The more people that know about us, the stronger the community becomes, because we're an informed community then. And so the way we do that is through analytics. So while you are listening to us right now, press that subscribe button or fill out that review. And these are things that raises the analytics. The better the analytics, the more people get to find out about Appleton Engaged.
Thank you so much, Lisa. 211 connects you with thousands of nonprofit and government services in your area. So if you want any assistance, call the 3-digit number 211, and a friendly voice will always be there on the other side to help you and listen to you. Thank you so much. Until next time, stay thoughtful, stay curious, and stay engaged.